Anandalila Maya Vigraya Himabadi Chavisundaraya Tasma Maha Primarasa Pradaya Chaitanya Chandaya Namanamastataya. So I thank everyone for being here this evening. Now the weather is getting better. Out here we're in the springtime. It's still cold in America. So I thank everyone and also those who are watching from the Vrindavan TV. So we are continuing the discussion. Now Lord Krishna now begins his teaching to Arjuna, because the first chapter deals with Arjuna's lamentation. It's dejection basically, because he sees that he's going to have to fight his relatives, especially his grandfather Bhishma Dev, his gurus, cousins, so many. Not to talk of unlimited soldiers who will have to die, and according to many scriptural evidences, which Arjuna cited, that when the men are killed, then their wives become devoid of protection, and then they become loose, and then they start producing the Vanasankara, unwanted populations, which is not good, which means the whole society become corrupt. The whole society ultimately will be destined to hell. So, but especially Arjuna is especially motivated by the fact that he has to fight his grandfather and his guru. So he was trying to convince Krishna that why should we engage in this battle? Just because of the greed, or just for the selfishness, for selfish motives. That's why we have to engage in this warfare. So Arjuna presented many, some of them logical, of course, citing many different evidences. So of course, Krishna, who is the Jagat Guru, Krishna Bandhe Jagat Guru, is the knower of everything. So Krishna knows better. Now he's going to correct Arjuna. So today's verse is text number 14. I read that, and then we do the discussion. Mātrā-sparśās kaunteya śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkha-dāḥ āgamāpāyino nityās tāṁs titikṣasva Bharata tāṁs titikṣasva Bharata Bharata mātrā-sparśās kaunteya śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkha-dāḥ āgamāpāyino nityās tāṁs titikṣasva Bharata mātrā-sparśās kaunteya śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkha-dāḥ āgamāpāyino nityās tāṁs titikṣasva Bharata.
Mātrā-sparśās kaunteya śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkha-dāḥ āgamāpāyino nityās tāṁs titikṣasva Bharata.
mātrā-sparśās kaunteya śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkha-dāḥ āgamāpāyino nityās titikṣasva Bharata.
mātrā-sparśās kaunteya.
śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkha-dāḥ.
āgamāpāyino nityās. tāṁs
titikṣasva Bharata.
mātrā-sparśās kaunteya.
śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkha-dāḥ.
āgamāpāyino
nityās.
tāṁs titikṣasva Bharata.
mātrā-sparśāḥ śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkha-dāḥ. āgamāpāyino nityās. tāṁs titikṣasva Bharata.
Mātrā-sparśāḥ, sensory perceptions to only kaunteya, O son of Kuntī, śīta, winter, uṣṇa, summer, sukha, happiness, dukkha, pain, dāḥ, giving, āgama, appearing, apāyinaḥ, disappearing, anityāḥ, nonpermanent. Tāṁs, all of them, titikṣasva, just try to tolerate. Bharata, O descendants of the Bharata dynasty. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki. O son of Kuntī, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception. O scion of Bharata, one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Purport. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate the non-permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to a Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of March, January and February. It is very cold at that time, but in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious duty of the Kshatriyas, and although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge. Because by knowledge and devotion, only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya illusion. The two different names of address given to Arjuna are also significant. To address him as kaunteya signifies his great blood relations from his mother's side, and to address him as Bharata signifies his greatness from his father's side. From both sides, he is supposed to have a great heritage. A great heritage brings responsibility in the matter of proper discharge of duties. Therefore, he cannot avoid fighting. Mātrā-sparśās kaunteya, śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkha-dāḥ, āgamāpāyino, nityās, tāṁs, titikṣasva, Bharata. So Krishna is telling Arjuna here about how the contact of the senses with the sense object produces the heat and cold. And when such heat and cold is produced, so depending on the season, one experiences happiness or distress, depending on the season. So for example, in the winter time, if you touch cold water, it's very inconvenient. You feel kind of miserable that, oh, the water is too cold. But the same cold water, if you touch it in the summertime, you feel pleasure. You say, oh, what nice, because it's cold water in the summertime. Now it's end of February now, and the Vrindavan is still good, the weather is still good. Next month will be, maybe it'll be little bit okay, but from April onwards, our heat begins, super hot. So that time, the cold water is nice. You feel very nice, very pleasurable. So the same element, the water. So depending on the season, it produces a different effect. The same water in this winter time, it produces one become miserable in the winter time, and the same elements in the summertime, one become happiness. There's one become one get pleasure. So which means Krishna says anityās. He said this is such thing. He said that āgamāpāyino anityās. He said that this is this coming and going. This is temporary. It's not permanent. So therefore, a spiritualist learns to tolerate a spiritualist remains equiposed during both seasons and then learn to tolerate all these conditions. Just like when people practice the system of yoga, so especially those who are in the Himalayas, the yogis in the Himalayas. So in the winter time, you find that the yogis they will submerge themselves in the cold water, even though the water is freezing, but they still put themselves in the cold water in the winter time. And then in the summertime, when it's very, very hot, they will surround themselves with, they will burn the fire. They will set up fire. They will surround themselves with fire. So that even though it's very, very hot, they will still set fire around themselves so that they can feel, it. So, which means, because they've learned to control the senses, that yes, that and the demand of this, the spiritual demand is that one must tolerate these conditions. What these conditions of hot and cold, comfort or discomfort, one must tolerate these things if one wants to rise above the condition of this material world, if one wants to rise above the conditions. So the yogis, in order to control their senses, to control their mind, this is what they do. Just like we were reading, I was giving the class this morning, in the Russian class, and we are talking about the Maharaj Prithu, who had gone to the forest, who took Vanapras and went to the forest called Tapovan, the forest where the austerities are being performed. And in this forest, he has to subject himself to all kinds of painful conditions, such as not wearing clothes, even though it's very, very hot, taking very, very cold bath in the early winter morning, and food, of course, practically non-existent. So he has to, subject himself with so many difficulties, just so that he can be equiposed. He can be equilibrium, whereby the senses are controlled. In the chapter 15 of the Bhagavad-Gita, the Lord talks about how the senses are always in demand, always demanding. The senses, they are like a wild horse. 5 senses, they're always pulling. They want to go this way, they want to go that way. And the living entity is someone who cannot control the senses, is always being dragged here and there by the senses. So a spiritualist have to control the senses. And the way of control is by this tolerance. So Krishna said, tāṁs, titikṣasva, Bharata, that you have to tolerate. One must learn to tolerate them. Now, how does this, let me just turn this off. How do we reconcile this teaching with the, let me just turn this off. So how do we reconcile this with the topic at hand here? How do we reconcile this? Because after all, when Arjuna has presented so many of his reasons why he cannot fight, or why they should not fight at all, that maybe it's better if you go to the forest than fighting and kill all these relatives. And then Arjuna, of course, became confused. He said, was the kaunteya Dusupata Shabhava, was that? He said that, now I'm completely confused. I don't know what to do. Now he turned to Krishna, that now you are the Guru, give me instruction. After asking, Krishna is the supreme Guru, all the knowledge coming from him. So the first instruction that Krishna told Arjuna, he said that the Lord said, Asochan Anvasuchastran Pragyam Vadamscha Bhasase Gatashan Agadasanscha Nanusuchanti Pandita. That, oh my dear Arjuna, you are speaking so many learned words, but you are mourning for something that is not worthy of grief. What you are mourning, you are lamenting for, this is not worthy of grief. So he says that those pandits, those who are pandits, they do not lament for living or the dead. They remain. Why? Because they understand that what is dying, what is living. Such living and dying that we experience, it's all due to illusion only. Because the reality is that the living entity, the living being, is different from the material body. But somehow, due to illusion or due to attachment, one laments for the body, which is meant to perish anyway. But due to attachment, one laments for it, due to attachment. So right from the beginning of his instruction, Krishna want to cut this illusion that Arjuna, is having. That, oh, my grandfather, my guru, my cousins, my friends, my relatives, they are going to die. Krishna said, no one dies. The so-called birth and death, this is just passing of the, especially, not, what's that, the, it's a not even jachunasa, not neme janadipa. That never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, not all these people, these soldiers, kings, and nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Now Krishna said, now he's been repeated now. How many times he said now? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now to evolve to now some. No, Trump, me, you, all these kings, everyone, everyone, we're always existing. There's not a single time we don't exist. So, and that's why the devotees, when they see someone leaving this body, and everyone is lamenting, devotees don't lament. Because what you are lamenting for, just like in the chapter, in the canto 7 of Bhagavatam, when after Hiranyaksha was killed by Lord Vishnu, Varahadev, so all the family members, the wives, and everything, children, they all lamenting, they all crying, all these things. Guess who went to instruct them? That stop your lamentation. Guess who went to instruct them? Who? It was Hiranyakashipu. Why? Because Hiranyakashipu was a Brahmana. He was the father's name? I forgot the name of the father. Because Hiranyakashipu was a Brahmana who know the science of, this science of, the spiritual science. So therefore, he instructed the wives of Hiranyaksha how they should stop. They should stop lamenting. It's not worth lamenting for. How the material body is, it's just temporary thing. And then he gave so many examples, and especially he brought in the example of a young boy who was actually Yamaraj himself. He came to give instructions, the story. It narrated a very, very nice, wonderful story. So which means if one is intelligent enough, then it's simply a matter of reasoning. That, we always give you this example that, the person that we are seeing all along that we are seeing, and all of a sudden that person is lying down on the ground. So the person is lying down on the ground, and then we are lamenting that, he's gone, he's gone, he's gone. But who has gone? It's still, the same body is still lying down on the ground. So what has gone? So it's just a matter of reasoning. How can you say the person has gone when the same person is lying on the ground? Which means you've never seen the person before. So that's why the Pandits don't lament. Vidya Vinaya, what is that? Vidya Vinaya Sampani Brahmano Gati, Brahmano Gavyashtini. What is that? The Pandits, they don't lament. They don't lament because they see the quality in all beings. They see everything. Why? Because they only see the soul. They don't see the body. So therefore they remain, neutral. They're always happy because that's what they are called Pandits. So this is what Krishna is telling Arjuna here. And then of course, Dehinoshmiyata Dehe Komana Yoganam Jara Tata Diantara Prapti Dirastratanamuho Yati. That yes, the embodied soul is passing from the body, come to this body, and then there are 6 stages, whereby the soul have to pass through 6 stages of the body. The bodily transformation from the boyhood to youth to to old age, stay for some times. Then there is death, and then again it goes into another body. So that's the wheel of samsara, where the world so keep rotating from one body to another body. And of course, this is based on karma. According to the karma that the person perform, he get a particular corresponding body. So let me just say so Krishna is telling Arjuna here that first of all, Krishna was addressing Arjuna that he has such a very illustrious heritage. Your ancestors, the son of Kuntī, kaunteya. So this is the son of Kuntī, or the son of Kuntī. Kaunteya is Mother Kuntī is Krishna's aunt. Mother Kuntī is Krishna's aunt. Came from such a great background. And not just that, Bharata Maharaj, the Kauravas, from his father's side, Arjuna is a descendant of Bharata, Maharaj Bharata, who was highly praised in the Puranas. Great personalities. I think the India was named after him. Not India, the whole planet was named. It was so great that this whole planet was named after him, Bharatvarsa. Now, of course, today Bharata become just India. Or otherwise, before it was just the whole world before Bharatvarsa. And not just that his father is descendant of Maharaj Bharata. The insemination of Arjuna was also done by King Indra. Indra was the king of heaven. So Arjuna has a very illustrious, heritage. So someone having such an illustrious heritage, how could he be resisting his duty? Because his duty is a Kshatriya. The duty is a Kshatriya, and the Kshatriyas have to perform their duties because, actually, as Prabhupada has mentioned in the purport here, that one had to execute his duty in spite of, inconveniences, whatever. To fight is because Arjuna's duty is to fight. That is his dharma, he's a Kshatriya. So Prabhupada said, to fight is the religious principle of the Kshatriyas, and although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious duties in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge. Because by knowledge and devotion only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya. So first, the dharma is there, religious duty, and then by the proper execution of dharma, then the knowledge arises. Gyan, and then from Gyan, of course, then there's bhakti. So there's, there is the progression of there is there. So one doesn't just abandon one's duty just because he finds some difficulty there, so therefore want to abandon it, and especially think by abandon the duty in order to go and take up someone else's duty. So this is nothing that is recommended in the scriptures, and this is what Krishna is instructing Arjuna that yes, this is something you have to be mindful of. So in the word of Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, whereby he made a comment on this particular verse. So Krishna is saying that let there be no lamentation caused by sorrow concerning Bhishma's existence in the future after he dies. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that there's no need to be lamenting because you are saying you think that okay, your grandfather is going to die in this battle. He said no. Krishna said there should not be no lamentation. But then Arjuna said, but I lament because of the grief caused by separation from him. Thus, my senses and mind are burning up. So which means Arjuna is saying that it's not that lamenting because I'm thinking that he's going to die, so therefore I have to lament because he's going to die. But the separation that I'm going to feel from him, this is a matter of a great consideration for me. So this is what Arjuna is saying. Because just like if the spiritual master passed away, disciples have to lament. We lament, we cry, just like when Prabhupada passed away here, all the devotees, the whole world was crying, Because, why? Because we no longer have that personal relationship in terms of, being able to this personal relationship is not, of course, the eternal relationship is always there, but that's just, especially if you're like a neophyte, if you're a new person, if you're like a neophyte person, whereby the physical association of the guru is required. So when the guru passed away, one is supposed to lament because it's not there anymore. So it's a deep cause for lamentation because of the separation. But of course, as Prabhupada will say, of course, he said, I will never die. So an experienced devotee, disciple, know that yes, Guru never dies. So Guru only dies for those who don't understand the spiritual principles. So, but Arjuna is saying here that the grief which is caused by separation from him, so this is causing my senses and mind to burn up. So this is what Arjuna is saying. So now, Srila Balaji Vidyabusan is saying, he said, matra means the functions of the senses, such as the skin by which the sense objects are defined. Thus, matra refers to the senses. So you have the senses, and you have the sense object. So the senses are like different, sense of touch, smell, taste, There are 5 senses. This is called matra. And then the object of the senses, of course, is what we can see, what we can feel. These are the object of the senses. So after the perceptions of the sense objects by the senses, the perceptions bestow sensations of hot, cold, happiness, or distress. Cold water, which in the summer gives pleasure, so the same cold water gives pain in the winter. Tolerate these temporary experiences. So Krishna telling Arjuna, titikṣasva, we have to tolerate them. Tolerate these temporary experiences, anityāḥ, since they appear and disappear. Āgamāpāyino. So āgamāpāyino, the happiness and the stress that we feel in this world, they come and go. They come, but then they go. Which means this material world, there is no permanent happiness and there is no permanent distress. Everything comes and goes. If let's say you lose something and you're lamenting for it, just be patient. After some time, you're going to gain something else. So, that's the condition of material life. It's only in spiritual world that there is no such a thing as a happiness and distress. In spiritual world, it's always happiness. It's bliss. It's bliss always in the spiritual world. But in the material world, we have happiness and distress in the material world. So Krishna says, tolerate these temporary experiences, anitya, because they are uncertain. This means that just as one takes cold bath in the month of Magha or January, though it is difficult because it is the injunction by having a sense of duty. So Arjuna should fight with Bhishma and others, though it is difficult because of the rules of scripture. At the present, he should tolerate the incidental experience of suffering for the accomplishment of proper dharma. From dharma comes the appearance of jnana, and from jnana comes liberation, after which there is no compliance to follow those rules. Giving up dharma without first becoming firmly established in jnana gives rise to obstacles. O son of Kuntī, O descendant of Bharata, it is improper for you to abandon the performance of dharma, since you have the purity of these two great personalities. So throughout the whole chapter 2, of course, the whole Bhagavad-Gita, of course, but this chapter 2 of the Gita, this is the summary of the whole text of the Bhagavad-Gita. Is a summary, because the Lord went through. The Lord explains first for the science of the soul, then the yoga systems. Yoga system, which means to be resolute in the Lord. Then the conditions of the practitioners, especially if one does not become successful in the practitioners, how there is no loss of anything like that, and how one becomes situated in yoga, like how one becomes situated in the practice of yoga. So all this was also discussed in brief in this second chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. And then, of course, from chapter 3, then the in-depth discussion of the Bhagavad-Gita begins. From karma to sacrifice, going on then to bhakti, jnana, and the renunciation. So this briefing. So this is being given to Arjuna. And of course, as we have said, many times, that Arjuna, of course, it's not that Arjuna does not know. Arjuna is Krishna's dear devotee, and Krishna is driving Arjuna on the battle of Kurukshetra. Krishna is called Partha, which means the charioteer of Arjuna, Bharata. So, Krishna being Partha, so which means Arjuna was not an ordinary person. Otherwise, who has his feet to be driven by God? Who is fit to be driven by God become your chauffeur? Who is fit to do that? It is just when Arjuna say, my dear Lord, please be my driver. I don't want your army. I want you only, and be my driver on this battle that is to come. Krishna said, yes, I become your driver. I become your charioteer. Because Arjuna is a dear devotee of Krishna. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Parto Danodara, Tata Shivya Moti Dhruvaniti Mati Mamaha. This is the final instruction, the final advice which Sanjay gave to Dhritarashtra. He said, look, wherever there is Arjuna, wherever there is Krishna, and wherever there is Arjuna, there will always be victory, there will be fame, there will be opulence, there will be everything. This is my opinion. He's telling Dhritarashtra this one. So which means don't expect anything great for your children in this battle to come. Because, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. Everything's come from Him. And his devotees are very, very, dear to Him. So, but because the Lord, He wants to speak this great knowledge to humanity, so the Lord speaks through His devotees only. The Lord, whenever the Lord wants to execute His will is always executed through His devotees. His will is executed through His devotees only. So the Lord wants to speak this great knowledge of the Bhagavad-Gita. So therefore, He's their devotee, Arjuna. So he became his disciples, and the disciples began to ask questions. We'll be asking, because there are so many questions which Arjuna will ask throughout the Bhagavad-Gita. And then the Lord will give appropriate answers. His answer is the most perfect answer. Because he's the most perfect person. So in the beginning here, Krishna is telling Arjuna that yes, you have to tolerate everything. You have to tolerate. And of course the great devotees, they understand this. So they always tolerate every situation that the Lord may put them in. Just like when Srila Prabhupada began the ISKCON society. So in the beginning, ISKCON began from a storefront. A storefront. I do have a storefront. And that time in America, this was 1966. So the storefront, it wasn't like the most opulent. First of all, the area, which is the Skid Row, we call it Skid Row in that part of Second Avenue, in that part of America, it wasn't like the best part of America. It wasn't the best part whereby you find the decent people. This is an area mostly it's all the drug addicts, hippies. They were gathering. This is their place. Normally, any gentle person will not go there. So the storefronts, this is where ISKCON began. Prabhupada came from the serene atmosphere of Vrindavan and then went to this place to begin the spiritual movement. So when Prabhupada was inside, when he started his preaching, and then Prabhupada communicated to his godbrother, he said that, we have opened a very wonderful temple. We have opened a very wonderful place. We have many devotees, all these things. We have many devotees. And I wish you all could join me, So, this is what Prabhupada was saying this in the storefront. There's nothing there. There's nothing. Just some dozens, hippie students who are visiting him. But Prabhupada said, we have everything. We have temples. We have books. He was glowing in his writing to his godbrother in India. Because Prabhupada was not seeing this place that is not, that is in a storefront. He could see the manifestation of the spiritual world, especially where the holy name of Krishna is being chanted. So he could see this manifestation of the spiritual world. And of course, he is the ambassador. He was the ambassador of the spiritual world. So he has come. Being the ambassador for the spiritual world. So wherever he is, that place becomes spiritual world. So from that humble, simple beginning of the 22nd Avenue, this storefront, which is called Matchless. They have a sign there, Matchless Gift. That sign was there before devotee rented that place. It's not that devotee put it there. Because when they saw it, you've been there, you've been there, right? Yeah. So it's not that when the sign was there, because the owner was using the place, I don't know what he was selling, but he put the place, he called it Matchless Gift. So when the devotee saw this, and they saw it to Prabhupada, said, oh, this is good, matchless gift, because after all, Krishna consciousness is matchless gift. What can match it? Huh? Yeah, so what can match it, matchless gift. So therefore, devotees, they said, okay, so they rented the place. It was upstairs. There was one big room in the ground floor, and then on the first floor there's I think 1 or 2 rooms where Prabhupada was making his room, his sleeping room. So the ground floor, they make it as a temple, and then the room, the first floor is the Prabhupada's room. He has his typewriter and all that. So anyway, that was the beginning of the spiritual movement. That time and today, it's completely different, of course. Totally different. We know that. And then when I joined ISKCON, ISKCON had maybe, not too many temples. But now we have temples all over the world. All over, everywhere. So anyway, so this is so I joined because the Lord, he need to execute his will, so he uses devotee. So Krishna told Arjuna, Bhakta Shime Shaka Ajeti, because you are my devotees, I am my friend, so therefore I am giving you this instruction. So therefore Arjuna was put in the bewilderment. He was put into confusion. This was the Lord's own design, to put Arjuna in this condition, so that the Lord can speak this great knowledge, this Bhagavad-Gita. Even though I think every year, every 15 months, we run through Bhagavad-Gita every 15 months. Is it? Yeah, no. It takes how long? It takes almost 2 years, almost. Yeah. So now, since the first time we started this in 2001. I think 2001 or 2. I was here at that time when the poverty methodologies started. So which means you must have been doing this now 22 years now. So which means 11 times we have again going through Bhagavad-Gita. Now at least 11 times. Now every time we are reading the text, it's always new. Many of us who are giving lecture on this Bhagavad-Gita, even though we are giving lecture on the same thing again and again, but each time we have to give a lecture, we have to prepare for it. Even though we have spoken on the same text again and again, still you have to prepare for it, because Bhagavad-Gita is the word of Krishna, and the word of Krishna is always new. It's always new. That's a fact. Just like each time you chant Krishna's name, you don't get tired. You don't get tired by chanting Krishna's name. Have you ever get tired by chanting? Otherwise, chanting the same, 16 rounds or many rounds you've been chanting for a long time. You don't get tired because it's Krishna's name. Krishna's name is always sweet. Krishna's word is always sweet. Maduram. So anyway, tomorrow the next speaker will continue tomorrow. So I thank you very, very much for listening. If there is any question or comments, you can go ahead. You can say something. Yeah.
Probably you in the class you mentioned about you read from the Bhagavad-Gita, like when Arjuna said I am not lamenting for the loss, for the death of my grandfather. I am lamenting my grief, my pain is of the remembrance of the times we spent together.
Yeah, this feeling of separation which we feel from you.
So how did Krishna answer to that?
Yeah, that's what I went through, and that's why Krishna is telling Arjuna that it just as you have to feel like you have to this śītoṣṇa, the winter and summer, which comes. You feel the hot or cold based on the contact of the sense object, and the Lord compared that the touching of hot and cold, the feeling of hot and cold, the Lord compared that to season winter or summer. But the Lord said because those experiences are temporary, both happiness or distress you get, they are temporary. So therefore, Krishna said, okay, the Lord said, this must be tolerated. Titikṣasva Bharata. That you are the descendant of a great person. You are a great person. So this must be tolerated. So which means the separation that you think you're going to have, this must be tolerated. After all, both you and your grandfather, you are both eternal. There's no death, there's no birth, there's no death, So, it just attachment, unnecessary attachment, which we have to this material world. So therefore, this feeling of separation that we have, be just due to attachment, which is really not necessary for spiritual culture. This attachment. So therefore, Krishna is telling Arjuna how he has to rise above this feeling of separation, attachment. He has to rise above that if he wants to progress in a spiritual culture. So that's the main the main thing that Krishna is saying. Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to know the small meaning of this Bharata. Dhritarashtra Vasa, Bharata. Rashtra I know, but what is the meaning of the Bharata?
Dhritarashtra.
This is the beginning of this Bhagavad-Gita. This is Dhritarashtra Vasa.
Yeah, Dhritarashtra, that's his name.
The first word is Bharata.
Yeah, the Dhritarashtra, and that's his name. Dhrita, which we have to analyze this, how to dissect the word. Dissect the... it's like how many syllables? Dhritarashtra is like... that's about 4 or 5 syllables.
That's I like to hear it. Anybody's maybe know.
So, 4 or 5 syllables is the word Dhritarashtra. So, Rashtra, of course... Dhritarashtra, let me see.
Nation, I know, but what is the meaning of the Dhrita? It's the first word.
Attached, strongly attached.
Strongly attached.
Attached.
Attached to nation.
Attached to nation.
Attached to the kingdom, attached to the
like
throne,
me.
attached to the world.
Maya.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So, those were Sanskrit pandits.
Keep that kingdom under him. Wanted to be the owner of this. But he could not get it because of his blindness. His younger brother got it. And then he wanted to get it back.
I like to clear this word.
There was so much text that he cannot read that.
Yeah, when you look in the dictionary, you can find so many meanings of that. Drita.
Nobody puts the name of this Dhritarashtra. No.
Actually, Prabhupada analyzed it a few times. I just can't recollect. But Prabhupada did analyze it a few times.
Prabhupada says in Kaliuga, every house has a Dhritarashtra.
Yes, of course, that's the thing. The attachment that we all have. The attachment. Yeah, we cannot. We can't be difficult for us to give up. The scripture said that all that Vanangatari Padastra, that there's a certain time that one has to leave home and go to the forest and take shelter of Hari. But because of attachment, we can't do that. We find it difficult to leave home. Many lectures probably say that you're an old person in the house. You become like a burden to your children. Why do you want to stay in the house till the very, very end? Why do you want to stay in the house? Get out, go to the forest. That's the whole thing. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.